The legacy they forced me to fix? It wasn't a gift. It was a poison they expected me to swallow, a lie I was supposed to keep. But I didn't. Instead, I made a choice that night. I chose to shatter everything. And if you've ever felt like you were just the fixer in your family, the one who always had to clean up everyone else's mess, hit that subscribe button. Because what you're about to hear is the story of how I ended my husband's family's legacy for good. My name is Eleanor, and this is how it all fell apart. The light from my phone screen was a harsh, cold thing in the bathroom mirror. It was just past 10 p.m., and I was clutching my phone, staring at a text from my husband. David, please, don't do this. I couldn't reply. I just looked at the woman in the mirror, a ghost of the person I used to be, worn down by 30 years of holding things together for everyone else. We were a family in crisis, but we were dealing with it in the only way we knew how, in suffocating silence. Outside the door, my husband and our 2 grown children were waiting. They were all silent. The silence was the worst part. For weeks, my life had been a blur of frantic preparation for a single event, the 50th anniversary gala for the Miller Family Foundation. My mother-in-law, Patricia, had given me a singular, impossible mission: save it. My husband's mother ordered me to fix their family legacy, she'd said, her voice dripping with the kind of false warmth that always made my skin crawl. I had accepted the task. Of course. For 30 years, I'd been the family's fixer, the one who smoothed over awkward moments and made everyone look good. I was the one who quietly handled the messes. I did it because that's what they expected. I played the part so well I had forgotten who I was without it. But then, I found it. The thing they never wanted me to find. A single, aging ledger tucked away in a box of old photos. As I looked at the numbers, the cold, hard reality of the situation hit me. The foundation hadn't failed due to bad luck. It had been systematically drained of its funds, and the numbers pointed directly to my brother-in-law, Mark. And what was even worse, a hidden note from Patricia to David revealed she had known about the whole thing. She wasn't just asking me to save a foundation, she was asking me to cover up a felony, a sick, twisted secret my husband had been a part of for years. The woman in the mirror wasn't a stranger anymore. She was a ghost, haunted by decades of lies. For 30 years, I had been the family's fixer, and for 30 years, I had been a fool. I looked at the designer dress David had bought me for the gala. He said it was a gift, but now I saw the truth. It was a bribe, a final piece of the charade. I took a deep, shaky breath, the cold tile floor sending a shock of reality up my spine. Outside this door, they were waiting. The people who had taken so much from me, they expected me to walk out, put on a perfect smile, and deliver a perfect speech about their perfect family. But tonight, they wouldn't get the fixer. They would get a truth teller. My husband's mother ordered me to fix their family legacy, I whispered to the woman in the mirror, my voice no longer a plea but a quiet vow. And I did. I fixed it by ending it. I unlocked the bathroom door and took the first step toward the rest of my life. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when the cracks started to show. You know, when the subtle little favors became a full-time job. I guess it started right at the beginning, when I met David and his family. I was fresh out of college, full of big dreams and a little naive. I thought I was marrying into this big, perfect, close-knit family. My mother-in-law, Patricia, was a force of nature. She ran every social event, chaired every committee, and had this flawless public image. To me, she was a role model. She welcomed me with open arms, But looking back, those arms were more like a velvet cage. She'd pull me aside after a family dinner, her voice conspiratorial, and say things like, "Eleanor, I just love how you organized the salads. Mark could never get this right." Mark was David's older brother, the golden child of the family. He was brilliant in a way that made everyone excuse his irresponsibility. He had this charm that just got him out of everything, and Patricia enabled it. She'd always find a way to smooth over his mistakes, and I, eager to please, would step in to help. It started with small things. Mark would forget a birthday, and I'd be the one to quietly buy a gift and sign his name. He'd bail on a family vacation he'd promised to plan, and I'd be the one to reorganize all the flights and hotels. I didn't see it as a burden then. I saw it as being part of the family, as helping out. David never said anything about it. He just saw it as me being helpful and organized. He would smile and say, "That's my Eleanor," and I would swell with pride. I genuinely believed I was the key to this big, beautiful, functional family. I was the one keeping the peace. My parents noticed it. Of course. My mom would call me and say, "Honey, you're always doing so much for them. Don't you get tired?" But I would brush it off. "It's what families do," I'd say, convinced that this was what a healthy family looked like. I didn't see that every time I fixed one of Mark's screw-ups. I was reinforcing his behavior. Every time I stepped in for Patricia, I was giving her more control. And every time David told me I was the best, he was just celebrating my ability to make his life easier, not valuing me as a person. The more I gave, the more they took. The big turning point came a few years into our marriage. Mark had started a real estate development company with family money, and it was a disaster. He was terrible with budgets and even worse with deadlines. He'd call me, not Patricia, not David, but me, sobbing about how he was going to lose everything. So I, the self-proclaimed fixer, put my own career on hold to help him get his books in order. I worked tirelessly, nights and weekends, fixing his mess and making it look like a respectable business. When he finally sold a property and made a profit, he gave all the credit to Patricia and his investors. I was completely invisible, and when I went to David, hoping for a little recognition, he just shrugged. "That's just how Mark is," he said. "He's the dreamer. You're the doer. We need you both." That's when I first started to feel it. That deep, unsettling pit in my stomach that told me something was wrong. But I pushed it down. I pushed it all down for years. I had a beautiful house, 2 wonderful children, and a perfect on-paper life. I told myself it was enough. I was the one who held it all together. I was the one who made everything work. But I had no idea that all that time, I wasn't building a beautiful life. I was just building a house of cards on a foundation of lies. And it was all about to come crashing down. They called me the fixer for a reason. But that role wasn't just about smoothing things over or cleaning up messes. It was a constant, exhausting performance. I was a master of emotional labor, the one who remembered every birthday, organized every family trip, and mediated every argument before it could escalate. It wasn't just favors anymore. It was my entire identity. For years, I just kept giving. My sister-in-law, a distant, quiet woman, once commented to me at a family gathering, "You know, you do a lot for everyone. Do you ever get tired?" I just laughed it off. "It's what families do," I said. But inside, I was already feeling the cracks. The truth was, I was exhausted. I was juggling our home, the kids' school schedules, David's demanding career, and a calendar of family obligations that felt more like a full-time job. I'd fall into bed at night, my head buzzing with to-do lists for everyone but me. The sacrifices were relentless. There was the summer I planned our dream trip to Italy, only for Patricia to suddenly declare she couldn't fly on short notice. David, without a second thought, told me to change the plans to a beach house a few hours away so she could join us. I spent weeks rebooking, getting all the confirmations, and rearranging our schedule, only to get an email from her a week before the trip saying she'd decided to go on a cruise with her friends instead. I had to cancel everything, but she acted like it was no big deal. "Thanks so much, Eleanor," she said with a dismissive wave. "We can just do Italy next year." There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the hours I'd put in, just a casual assumption that my time was theirs to waste. That's what it was. An assumption. David assumed I would handle everything because I always had. He never saw the late nights I spent researching, the stress I carried, or the sheer weight of their expectations. He just saw the end result, the seamless holiday, the perfect gift, the family peace. He would always say, "You're so good at this, babe." And I'd accept the compliment, even as it felt less like praise and more like a prison sentence. The cracks in my perfect façade became more visible, and they began to affect my marriage. I would try to talk to David about it, but he would just shut down. "You worry too much, Eleanor. Mom is just being mom. It's not a big deal." He saw my stress as an overreaction, not a valid emotion. His inability to see my struggle made me feel completely invisible. I was running on empty, while he was running on cruise control, completely oblivious. The worst part was realizing he wasn't being malicious. He was being exactly what his family had trained him to be, a man who depended on a woman to handle all the emotional labor. Someone who saw my burnout as an inconvenience rather than a serious issue. I was his wife, the mother of his children, and his equal in every way except for the one that mattered most in his eyes. I was simply the family's fixer, and that was all I was expected to be. The quiet resentment started to build. I thought I was strong for bearing all this, but in reality, I was just letting them all take advantage of me. I had allowed myself to become a doormat, and I had no one to blame but myself. I was so busy managing everyone else's emotions that I had completely forgotten how to manage my own. And I had no idea that this quiet discontent was about to turn into a full-blown rebellion. There comes a point in every marriage, I think, where you have to decide if you're a team or just two people occupying the same space. For David and me, that question was always unspoken. I was the doer, the fixer, the one who made everything work. He was the provider, the rock, the one who was always there, even if he wasn't always present. I told myself it was a fair division of labor. I truly did. It had been a busy summer. Our son, Ethan, was graduating from college, and our daughter, Lily, was starting her first job in a new city. I was so proud of them, and for a brief, beautiful moment, I felt a sense of freedom, like a chapter was closing and I could finally turn the page and start focusing on me. I even had this silly dream of going back to my art classes. It was a small, quiet hope I hadn't dared to think about for years. Then the phone rang. It was Patricia. Her voice, usually sharp and commanding, was thin, almost panicked. "Eleanor, thank God you answered. We have a crisis." My stomach immediately twisted into a familiar knot. It was always a crisis with the Miller family. What is it? Patricia. The foundation, she said, her voice dropping to a low whisper. We're in trouble. Big trouble. The gala is in 2 months, and we're nowhere near our fundraising goal. The board is furious. This is a disaster. It's going to ruin us. Ruin everything. I took a deep breath, trying to process the information. The Miller Family Foundation was the crown jewel of their legacy. It was founded by David's grandfather and had been their family's pride and joy for decades. I knew they had been struggling to bring in donations, but I had no idea it was this bad. What do you need me to do? I asked, already knowing the answer. I need you to take over. I need you to plan the gala, to find the sponsors, to organize everything from the invitations to the seating chart. Mark is useless, and David has his hands full at work. You're the only one who can save this. You have to. Eleanor, you're our only hope. The way she said it, it wasn't a request. It was an order. I felt a cold dread wash over me. I had just gotten my life back. Just yesterday, I was looking at art supplies online, dreaming of a future where I wasn't just planning other people's lives. And now this. I went to David. He was in his study, scrolling through his phone. Patricia called, I said. The foundation is in trouble. She wants me to take over the gala. He didn't look up. I know. It's a mess. I told her you'd handle it. You're so good at this kind of thing. Babe, you'll figure it out. I stared at him, my heart sinking. He had already agreed. He had given away my time, my energy, my dreams without even a single conversation with me. But what about me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What about my plans? He finally looked up, a hint of annoyance in his eyes. Eleanor, don't be difficult. This is the family foundation. This is a huge deal. Your art classes can wait. What's more important? Your little hobby or our family's reputation. That was it. That was the moment. The full weight of his casual dismissal hit me. The years of me being the doer and him being the provider collapsed into a single, devastating truth. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a resource. My time wasn't my own. It was a commodity he could trade in for his family's convenience. I wasn't his wife. I was his mother's fixer. I felt a quiet fury build inside me, a slow burn that had been simmering for years. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked away. The next few weeks were a blur of frantic work. I threw myself into the project, not out of passion, but out of a cold, quiet determination. I needed to do this. I needed to prove to myself that I could, that I was more than just a housewife with a hobby. I started going through all the foundation's financial records, reorganizing every account, every donation, every expense. I was looking for a way to save it, a way to pull a miracle out of thin air. That's when I found it. The thing that changed everything. It was a small, dusty ledger, hidden behind some old files in Patricia's home office. I was looking for the original sponsorship agreements, and when I pulled it out, a small piece of paper fell to the floor. It was a note from Patricia to David. The handwriting was neat, precise. David, the books are a mess. I need you to do something about this. Mark has a problem, and we need to handle it before it gets out. I'm giving him the funds from the South Wing, but we need to cover our tracks. This stays between us. I stared at the note, my heart pounding in my chest. The South Wing was a huge, beautiful new addition to the children's hospital that the foundation had supposedly funded entirely. I couldn't believe my eyes. Mark hadn't just been mismanaging funds. He had been stealing from the foundation. He had been stealing from sick children. And my mother-in-law had not only known about it, but she had helped him cover it up. I started digging deeper, my hands trembling as I cross-referenced the numbers. I found the transfers, the fake invoices, the fabricated reports. It was all there, laid out in cold, hard numbers. The foundation was a house of cards, built on a mountain of lies. And my husband's mother ordered me to fix their family legacy so I could be the one to quietly cover up a multi-million-dollar fraud. They weren't asking me to be a hero. They were asking me to be their accomplice. I couldn't breathe. My entire body felt numb. I looked at the picture of David on my desk, a picture of us on our wedding day. We were so young, so in love. I thought we were a team. I thought we were partners. But in that moment, I knew the truth. David knew. He knew about all of it. He was a part of the lie, and he had let me walk right into the middle of it. He had handed me the shovel and told me to start digging, knowing full well that I was digging my own grave. I felt a quiet scream build inside me, a scream that had been 30 years in the making. My entire marriage, my entire life, had been a lie. I wasn't just a fixer. I was a pawn. I finally understood. I understood why Patricia had called me, not David. I understood why David was so dismissive of my plans. They weren't just using me for my skills. They were using me to protect their secret, their legacy, and their son. And I had been too blind to see it. I had been so desperate to be loved, so desperate to be the fixer, that I had become a part of their sick game. I closed the ledger, the sound echoing in the silent room. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from a bone-deep betrayal that went all the way to my core. I thought I knew what a crisis was. I thought a crisis was an emergency phone call about a failing foundation. But the real crisis was the one staring back at me from the pages of that ledger. The crisis was my life. I had been so busy fixing everyone else's problems that I had completely failed to see that my own life was broken, and I had no idea what to do. The gala was in a few weeks. The invitations had already been sent out. All of the most important people in our lives would be there, and I, the family fixer, was now standing on the edge of a cliff, about to make a decision that would change everything. I could walk away. I could leave the ledger, pretend I had never seen it, and just go back to my quiet life. Or I could expose them. I could bring everything they had ever built crashing down around them. But if I did that, I would be destroying my own life, too. I would be destroying my marriage, my family, everything I had ever worked for. I stood there for a long time, the note from Patricia clutched in my hand, feeling the full weight of the betrayal, and I had no idea what I was going to do next. That was the moment the world stopped spinning. The air in my home office suddenly felt too thick to breathe. I stood there, the weight of that ledger in my hands, feeling every single one of my 55 years pressing down on me. I wasn't just a fixer. I was a pawn, an unwitting accomplice. They had used my loyalty, my hard work, my very identity to cover up a felony. My own husband had let me do it. For a long time, I just stood there, staring at the pages, at the neat handwriting that documented every single lie. I didn't feel anger, not at first. I felt a kind of cold, hollow emptiness, like a house that had been completely gutted. All the furniture, all the walls, all the precious little memories of my life and marriage, gone. Just gone. My whole world, the one I had so carefully constructed, was a complete lie. I went to David. He was in the kitchen, making a sandwich, completely oblivious. The normalcy of it all was sickening. "David," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "We need to talk." He turned, still chewing. "Hey, babe, you find what you were looking for? Everything okay with the budget?" I held up the ledger. The small, unassuming book looked so innocent, but it held a poison that could destroy us all. "I know," I said, my voice finally finding its strength. "I know everything." He went pale. The sandwich dropped from his hand, the bread falling open on the counter. "Eleanor, what are you talking about?" "The foundation," I said, my voice flat. "The money, Mark. The note from your mother. I know you both knew about it. You let me walk right into the middle of this. You told me to fix it when you knew it was a crime." He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes darting around the room, anywhere but at me. "Eleanor, listen, it's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think," I said, the anger finally starting to bubble up inside me. "You didn't see me as your partner. You saw me as a tool, the one who cleans up your family's messes, the one who quietly fixes everything so you don't have to face the music." I took a step closer, my voice rising. "For 30 years, David, 30 years, I've been running myself ragged trying to make your family's life perfect, and all this time, you were just using me to hide a lie." He finally looked at me, his eyes full of fear. "It's not that simple. Mark is my brother, Mom. She was just trying to protect him. This is our family, Eleanor. We have to protect our own." "Protect them?" I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "You let me stand here, working myself to death to save a foundation that was built on lies, while your brother was stealing from sick children. You let me do this. You let me believe I was doing something good, something important, when all I was doing was being your accomplice. How could you—" He couldn't answer. He just stood there, his face a mask of shame and fear. The truth of what I was saying was undeniable. The silence hung between us, thick and heavy with 30 years of unspoken truths. He took a step toward me, reaching for my hand. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can figure it out. Just don't do anything crazy. Not tonight. Don't do anything crazy," I repeated, my voice ice cold. "My entire life has been a quiet, slow-motion crazy, and you've stood by and watched it happen. You think you can just apologize and make this all go away. It's not a broken dish. David, you don't get to just glue it back together and pretend it's whole." I walked away from him and back into my office. My mind was racing. I had a choice. I could leave. I could pack my bags, take my daughters, and walk away from this broken, rotten family. I had enough money saved to start over. I could just disappear, or I could fight back. I thought about all the other fixers I knew, the women who organized the PTA bake sales, who planned the corporate holiday parties, who managed the family budgets and schedules, all while their husbands and families took all the credit. I thought about the thousands of women who had been in my shoes, who had been silenced, dismissed, and taken for granted. I thought about the quiet desperation that had been my constant companion for 3 decades. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about all of us. This was about every woman who had ever been told that her work didn't matter, that her feelings were overreactions, and that her dreams could wait. I had an opportunity, a chance to show everyone that being the fixer wasn't a compliment. It was a cage. I looked at the ledger, at the documents, at all the evidence of their betrayal. I thought about what they were trying to protect. Not their family, their reputation, their legacy. They had built their entire world on a lie, and I was holding the match that could burn it all to the ground. The anger was gone, replaced by a cold, clear resolve. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. I wasn't just fixing their problem anymore. I was solving it. And the solution wasn't to cover it up. The solution was to expose it. I opened my laptop and started working. I spent the next few hours putting together a presentation. It wasn't the one Patricia and David were expecting. It wasn't about all the great things the foundation had done. It was about all the terrible things they had hidden. I gathered every single piece of evidence, the financial documents, the email exchanges, the note from Patricia. I put it all together into a devastating, bulletproof presentation. A presentation that would be played for everyone. For the board members, for the sponsors, for the press, for my family, for everyone. I knew this would destroy my marriage. I knew it would alienate my children. I knew it would likely end my relationship with every single person in David's family, but I also knew I had to do it. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me. I was doing it for the woman in the mirror who had been so lost for so long. I was doing it for the girl who had big dreams and a little hope. And I was going to show her that she was worth fighting for. I saved the presentation to a USB drive and put it in the pocket of my dress. Tonight, I wasn't going to be a fixer. I was going to be a truth teller. And I was going to show them all exactly what happens when you underestimate the person you ask to do all the work. The air in that ballroom was thick enough to chew. Everyone was whispering, their fancy suits and glittery gowns doing a poor job of hiding their anticipation. This was the night of the Foundation's annual gala, an event that was supposed to be about legacy and philanthropy, but I knew it was about to become a stage for something else entirely. Eleanor had given me a look earlier, a subtle nod that said, "Get ready for the fireworks." And man, was I ready? I watched her walk onto the stage. She didn't have to announce herself. The whole room went silent the moment she stepped up to the podium. She wasn't wearing a flashy dress or anything, just a simple, elegant black gown. It was like she was dressing for a funeral, and in a way, she was burying a lie. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice steady and clear, but with a slight tremor that made it sound so vulnerable, so human. "It's an honor to be here tonight, celebrating the legacy of this incredible family. My husband's family." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, but I saw her eyes lock onto a few key people: Mark, who was fidgeting with his tie at a table near the front, and his mom; Sarah, who was beaming with a self-satisfied smile, completely oblivious. "When I first married into this family," Eleanor continued, "I was taught that a family's legacy is everything. It's the name you carry, the values you uphold, the history you pass down." She spoke with such genuine emotion, it was almost creepy. It was the kind of performance that only someone who had been deeply hurt could pull off. I was told that this foundation, this name, stood for integrity, for honor, for making the world a better place. A massive screen behind her lit up. A beautifully edited video began to play. It started with old, sepia-toned photos of the family grandparents smiling, kids running on a green lawn, Mark and Eleanor at their wedding, looking so happy and hopeful, the kind of shots you'd see in a heartwarming Hallmark movie. The music was soft, an acoustic guitar melody that pulled at your heartstrings. Sarah looked thrilled, probably thinking this was some tribute to her and her perfect family. Mark even seemed to relax a little, a small smug smile playing on his lips. But then, the music started to shift. The gentle melody was replaced by a more suspenseful, almost foreboding tune. The screen filled with what looked like legal documents, contracts, and financial statements. They were stylized, not just boring pages. The key numbers and phrases were highlighted in red and yellow. The visuals were simple but devastatingly effective. A line would trace from a huge number on one document to an offshore bank account, a fake company name flashing on the screen. It was all so clean, so easy to follow. A chart would pop up, showing the family's wealth going up, while the foundation's charitable donations were a flat line, or even dipping. I saw the color drain from Sarah's face. Her triumphant smile melted into a look of pure, unadulterated horror. Mark's jaw went slack. He wasn't just embarrassed. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. He tried to stand up, to do something, but he just sat there, frozen, watching the house of cards fall right in front of him. The video showed shell companies, inflated invoices, and finally, a clear, damning paper trail of a massive amount of money siphoned from the foundation's funds and funneled directly into Mark and his mother's personal accounts. The final frame of the video was just a simple black background with stark white letters. The suspenseful music cut out, and a profound silence filled the room. A family's legacy is built on integrity, not on lies. That's it. That was the last thing on the screen. Eleanor didn't say another word. She just took a deep breath, her shoulders straight, and walked off the stage. She didn't look at Mark or his mother. She didn't look at the crowd. She just walked out of the room, leaving behind the shattered silence and the collective gasp of everyone who had just witnessed the public downfall of one of the city's most respected families. The humiliation was so complete, so brutal, that it was almost beautiful. I watched Mark's mom, Sarah. She looked like she had just been physically struck. Her carefully constructed persona, the one she had spent a lifetime building, was in ruins. Her lips were trembling, her eyes wide with panic. Mark, on the other hand, was just a blank slate of shock. He was completely gutted. Everything he had, his money, his status, his entire identity, was built on this family's legacy, a legacy that had just been exposed as a complete sham. The whispers started again. But this time they were different. They weren't about the latest gossip or who was wearing what. They were about the numbers, the lies, the betrayal. The whole room felt like it was suffocating. I wanted to laugh, but all I could feel was a strange sense of emptiness. The satisfaction I thought I would feel wasn't there. It was more like relief. It was over. The game was finally over. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same. The moment Eleanor left the stage, the gala turned into a scene from a silent movie. A room full of movers and shakers, frozen in shock. Sarah was the first to move. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just stood up, her face a mask of cold fury, and marched towards the exit, her silk dress rustling like angry leaves. Mark, on the other hand, was still slumped in his chair, staring at the empty screen, his world having just imploded. It was pathetic, and for a fleeting second, I almost felt bad for him. Almost. I found Eleanor outside, leaning against a marble pillar, just breathing. The cool night air was a stark contrast to the stifling heat of the ballroom. She wasn't smiling. There was no look of triumph on her face, just exhaustion. She looked at me, and I could see the weight of everything in her eyes. The years of gaslighting, the betrayal, the quiet planning, it had all led to this one moment, and now that it was over, she was just empty. "You did it," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You really did it." She just nodded. "The truth is out." "Yeah, but what now?" She straightened up, a newfound resolve replacing the exhaustion. "Now, we start over, without them." She looked at me, really looked at me, and a small, genuine smile finally touched her lips. "This isn't the end of a family. It's the beginning of a new one, the one we choose." And just like that, the air changed. The city lights seemed to twinkle a little brighter. The night felt full of possibilities, not just consequences. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The video of Eleanor's speech went viral. It was all over every news channel, every social media feed. "Legacy of Lies" became the headline of the year. Mark and Sarah's faces were everywhere. The picture of public disgrace. The family foundation was immediately put under investigation, and it wasn't long before we heard that criminal charges were being filed. I ran into Mark a few months later at a coffee shop. He looked different. His designer suit was gone, replaced by a cheap hoodie. His slick hair was a mess. He saw me and his eyes darted away, but it was too late. I just stood there, holding my iced latte, and for the first time, I felt something other than contempt. It was a kind of pity. He wasn't the man I knew. He was just a shell, a product of a legacy he had no part in building and no idea how to live without. Eleanor and I, though, we were thriving. She sold the family mansion and used the money to start a new foundation, a smaller one, but one built on real integrity. We went on a road trip, just the two of us, no plans, no timelines. We drove through little towns, talked for hours, and just healed. I saw the real Eleanor emerge, not the strong, stoic woman who planned a family's downfall, but the kind, funny, resilient person she was underneath all the layers of betrayal. She wasn't defined by her past anymore. She was defined by her future. The truth is, some family legacies are built on lies and manipulation, and breaking free from them isn't easy. It's messy, it's painful, and it leaves scars. But sometimes, you have to burn down the old house to build a new one that's truly yours, brick by honest brick. If you've ever felt trapped by someone else's expectations, if you've ever had to stand up for yourself against a family that put lies before love, then you know this story isn't just about money or drama. It's about finding your voice, taking back your power, and building a life you're truly proud of. And if you've been on this journey with me through every twist and turn, every moment of betrayal and every triumph, then you're already part of the family I'm building. So, if you want to be a part of a community that values authenticity over everything else, and if you're ready to see more stories about people who fought to take their lives back, hit that subscribe button right now, because this is just the beginning. I have so many more stories to tell you, so many more secrets to uncover, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. So subscribe, join the family, and let's keep it real.